All right, welcome everybody. This is our CCRESA Summer EdTech Training Series, session number 4, Screencasting 101. I'm Allison Rogers, Instructional Tech at RESA, and we're going to go ahead and get started. You can follow this bit.ly link if you want access to the presentation that has various links and resources. During the agenda today, or during the session today, we're going to cover just some basics, right? What in the heck is screencasting? I think we've all heard of that word, but what does that actually mean? We're going to talk about the purpose of it, when you would actually use it, like really specific scenarios, depending upon what position within education you work, right? So it's not just for teaching, it can be used for a bunch of different things. I'll talk about some of the interaction options you can use with specifically students and the framework you might use for best instruction. We'll talk about overall best practices, and we'll do a quick comparison of just a couple of resources that are out there. And then I'll just go over a couple elements of the preferred tool that I use called Screencast-O-Matic. All right, so what is Screencast-O-Matic, or what is screencasting rather? So I found this definition. It's a bit wordy, a bit lengthy. In fact, I'm actually demonstrating what not to do during a screencast, have a bunch of text on your screen. But I felt like this definition from this Canvas Screencasting 101 course really captured the definition. So I'm going to give you just a second to read this definition so you can get a handle on what that means. So I like the reference here that just like a screen grab is capturing the actual screen on your computer, a screencast is capturing the actual movement and video and demonstration on your screen. So it's more like a live version of a screen grab. You can use it as guidance, you can use it as a demonstration, you can use a screencast to essentially capture the activity that's happening on your screen, including adding obviously your face, or you can just show a slide deck, or you can show a website. So screencasting can really be used in a variety of different ways, but essentially it is recording or capturing your computer screen. Now what you showcase is up to you. And lastly, I like the last part, that it captures that feeling of personal connection, like a podcast, but with the added benefit of actually having a video and a recording to be able to discuss and refer back to and watch multiple times if needed. So essentially what we're doing right now is, you could call this a screencast, right? I'm casting my screen, I'm recording, in this case, my slide deck, but I'll be jumping in and out of my slide deck. I'll be showing you some tools, and you're going to be following along, right? I could enable my video and pop my head in. This is all just one example of a screencast, and for our purposes, this is for professional development. So why would we screencast? So the biggest reason, in my opinion, is that you can share information and knowledge in the most flexible way, right? So someone could watch this screencast right now, live. They could be a part of it, right? Someone could have the link to the recording and watch it tomorrow, watch it next year. They could watch it on their phone. They could watch it on their computer. So there's a lot of flexibility. I like screencasting for the sake of saving time, right? So I bet we all, especially teachers out there, I bet there are some frequent flyer questions that you received through the years. And you're like, man, if I had a nickel for every time that question was asked of me, I'd be pretty wealthy. So instead of having to always repeat yourself, what if you made a 30-second screencast of a couple of frequently asked questions, right? For whatever it is, whether it's content driven or maybe it's something text specific. I always get asked, you know, this specific question. Why not I create a screencast? That way you can direct folks to help themselves by following up with watching that screencast. It also allows you to create consistency. So if you are showcasing maybe like rules and expectations as a teacher at the beginning of the year, or maybe you're talking through more administratively, like the processes that need to take place from the business side of things, or anything that needs to sort of have a consistent game plan or foundational timetable that is, okay, when we do this, then we do this. And instead of having to repeat that or have multiple, maybe like hard copies or Word documents of all the same thing, you could embed all of those resources into one video and screencast your screen, and then you have that really clear and concise and direct information for anybody at your facility to view. And this, this next one's kind of a loaded statement. So it's easier for your content instruction to effectively reach students when the delivery is more individualized and focused. So yeah, basically what that means is like, yeah, of course it's easier to teach when students aren't there, right? Of course you can deliver your lessons when there's no distractions, no interruptions. But what that means is it might even also improve engagement or the ability for students to focus if you have, let's say, a lesson that is, you know, maybe in class, in person, it could potentially take 30 minutes to get through because of, you know, just the life stuff that happens, the human aspect, or a lesson that really your actual direct instruction might only take 5 minutes. So you record that lesson and then students can engage that individually. And you might have one student that watches it the first time and boom, they're done. You might have another student that has to rewatch it 3 times and rewind, pause the recording, take a look at the captions, all of those built-in accommodations, right? So and initially from the teacher standpoint, screencasting can be effective in that it almost allows for individualized instruction. That doesn't mean that you can't obviously screencast when you're teaching whole group, maybe even virtually, right? But there are elements of, hey, I'm going to teach this 1 5-minute lesson. I'm going to load that up front and then share that out. So there's kind of different ways that you can approach screencasting. And I won't get too far into the flipped classroom piece, but it's obviously a big element with flipped classroom. All right, I'm going to talk about a couple of examples of personally how I've used these in my work and then in just my daily life. So why have I screencasted, or what have I used them for? I think many of the RESA employees are familiar with my Tech Tip Tuesday videos. Every week I will create some sort of anywhere between like a minute to sometimes it gets a little lengthy, 5-minute video, just showcasing. Sometimes it's the newest tech tool, but sometimes it's, hey, did you know Google updated this? Or, hey, did you know that you could actually, you know, make your life easier by using this efficiency technique? So it's nice little snippets of information that usually are pretty well received. It also keeps me up on, you know, what's the new tech tool and also what are the new updates. Another way I use it is when I get questions from folks that are maybe a little bit more complicated than being able to explain it in an email or a phone call. And like, let's say I can't be in person. Instead, I can just record my screen, and that maybe it'll take 10 minutes to really get it the way I want. But if I were to send an email or a phone call, you know what I mean, it might be an hour. So that's kind of another way to uncomplicate those conversations by saying, hey, here's my explanation. And also from the person receiving that information, they can then watch that video, pause it, and have maybe even like 2 screens open at once and like follow along with me, even though I'm not physically there. So, and that could translate to lots of different roles in education. Obviously, I use screencasting for professional development and training, as is today. And then just another example, when we moved from RESA from Outlook to Gmail and Calendar, I created some tutorial screencast videos that just helped everybody through the process. Again, they could watch it on their own time, but I didn't have to, you know, individually go to everybody's office, or I didn't have to do, you know, only in-person training. This was sort of an opportunity to support individually, but on, you know, using it on their own time. A couple examples of how I've used screencasting even personally. I live in a condo, and our condo association early on was kind of struggling with getting communication out, and the board wanted to start creating like a contact group, but while still maintaining privacy of emails, that sort of thing. And so the members of the board were not quite as familiar with this process, we'll say that. And so instead of knowing that I would probably be getting, 18 different phone calls for support, I created a screencast and sent it along to them. And then I never heard a peep because they had that upfront learning and the opportunity to reflect back and rewatch if needed. The same thing goes for my family. I've got some less tech savvy folks that sometimes they need help. And so instead of, having that phone call back and forth, I think we've all experienced that in some capacity, I can, just send out a quick video. And then I've also used screencasts for, fun memos, birthday greetings, that kind of thing. So there's lots of different ways in which you can do screencasting. And I think we would be remiss if we thought screencasting is just because we now maybe have to teach remotely, right? Screencasting can be used in so many different ways for so many different roles. And let me show you some examples. All right, so what could I actually do with a screencast, or what could I create? The obvious options would be how-to guides, tutorials, demonstrations, right? Of course, that makes sense. But you'd also send a personalized greeting or message. I can envision this being like when you're checking in on students, or maybe you have a new hire, sending an individualized message is a nice touch. Introducing yourself. They call it creating your virtual presence. So instead of just sending a welcome email or introductory phone call, this gives you a little bit more like even, like a face to virtual presence, if that makes sense. You could do a screencast if you are doing a big presentation. Maybe you're doing a staff training, and maybe whoever's presenting on that specific topic couldn't be there. You could still record that screencast and people could still get that information. Obviously, you could record lessons as a teacher. Students could use this to, after they've received your lesson and done the practices, maybe demonstrate what they've learned or create a project. This is also a great tool for substitute teachers to ensure that exactly what it is that you want done while you're gone happens. There's a video. You could also send that video to students to ensure that as well. Or absent kids. That's a great way to make sure there's no missing learning. And what's great is, especially if you're already recording your lesson, it makes sense for that to be shared out to kiddos that weren't in class. Parent communication engagement. This would be a really nice touch, especially when you might not have those meet the teacher nights or the back to school nights, that piece where you are really, it's important for that physical interaction to happen. So this would be a great way to engage parents. It would be also a nice way to inform them of like what opportunities exist at school, right? Maybe there's some extracurriculars or clubs or sports, or maybe you keep getting those common questions about what is required, what materials need to happen. A screencast would be a nice touch as well. Providing feedback to students, right? So not just writing the letter grade or however many out of the number total that they received, or not scribbling down notes on the side, but actually recording your message. As a former high school English teacher, I kind of wish I would have utilized that a little bit more, because that would be a huge time saver instead of having to spend lots of time typing or writing, but you talk it out, you share your feedback that way. Reading books aloud to students, that might be a nice touch, especially with the littles, hearing that actual like personal teacher's voice read the book. Showcasing how to complete an assignment. So really, I think right now, especially walking through not just how to complete a task, but like how would you approach this skill, and having it in language that is student and parent friendly, because I think a lot of times parents are helping students at home with their work or their homework, and especially now when it's basically remotely a lot of times. So providing a prompt or posing a question, so you could do a little screencast and then have them answer questions at the end, and I'll show you some examples of that next. And then lastly, you could even do like pull up all your class resources. Maybe you have a Google Classroom, maybe you have a Google site or a class website. Maybe you have like Infinite Campus from like the parent portal side or PowerSchool. Pull that up and demonstrate how to navigate that so you're not getting the same questions all the time, and it is consistent that both students and parents have received this information and can refer back to it. I can see that one being a big time saver. So anyway, that was just my list of items that I thought, gosh, off the top of my head, or some of the examples I've seen and how screencasts can be used within education, but that's definitely not the end-all be-all list. So let me show you some examples of how you might use a screencast video or recording. And this is a little bit catered to more of the teacher perspective here. So if I've done a screencast, I have my recording, what do I do with it now, right? Do I just send it in an email to my students? How do I make it engaging and have it actually be sort of that seamless piece within my instruction and very much accessible? So for example, you could post a recording in a Google form and actually like ask a question around it. So let me show you this example. That's a screenshot of it, but so you could embed this in a Google form, right? You could give your directions. There's an opportunity to add a form, or within your form, add a YouTube video or add a link. You can embed that in your form, and then again, just add your questions like you normally would, right? So this is obviously the upfront screencast work is already done, but you're adding it to then a Google form, something that many people already do anyway, but maybe instead of just having multiple choice or the like traditional type of questions, now you have that interactive piece with the video. The next example I have, post a recording in a Google Classroom question and then have students discuss. So what that looks like, and this is just kind of walks you through how you can do that in how to create a question within Google Classroom. But if I were to go to a sample Google Classroom, and I'm just going to walk you through how I would do this. So I'm going to go to my classwork stream, I'm going to click create, and then I'm going to click question. And then I can, click add, and then click YouTube, and actually can throw in the link to my screencast here, and it will fully embed that video as you can see in the example. And then when I go to the stream, I can click on, oh, I've asked a question. This is from the teacher view, but I go to my question, kids can click on the video, we'll open it up, and then you can comment. And you can enable to have students comment on just the video, or they can comment on each other's comments. So it's a nice way to embed that screencast, that lesson, that whatever you've created, and now you've created a class discussion and it's a little bit more interactive. My next example is using the tool called EdPuzzle. And with EdPuzzle, you can, what's really cool about EdPuzzle is that you can upload your own videos, but you can also upload videos that already exist from like Khan Academy, YouTube. So like videos that have already been created, like little lessons that have already been created. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel about whatever you're teaching. You can then edit those videos and like add your own voiceover. You can embed different questions. So let me show you a little bit what this looks like in the live EdPuzzle site. So I selected a video, just like a random math video. And actually, I'll do it from the beginning. Let me, so I would create an account, and then, I can see like all of the content I can select for. Here's all of the different channels that I could choose from, right? Even EdPuzzle has their own channel. I could also, go to, let's say Khan Academy, sure. So I can select a video, fractions, lovely. And then I can just assign the video right as is to my class. And I obviously would have to create a class. But what I can also do, and I'll show you what I've done in this example, is if you listen to this video, you can see I've got markers here. And these markers are where I've embedded specific questions, right? So I've paused the video and I won't let the students move on until they've answered my question. So what's really nice is you can embed questions, you can embed just like discussion points, you can voice over so students hear your voice. So if I wanted to edit the video, I'll show you what that looks like a little bit. So I can cut the video, shorten it, I can do my own voice, I can add a question, and I can, sync up where I actually want that question. Say I want to hear. Then I click, sure, I want to have open-ended question. What are your thoughts? Then they have to, and I click save, and then there's a little marker, okay, so they can't move on until they've responded to that question. So again, you could do this with videos that exist or with your own screencasts. So especially if you're using a tool that doesn't allow this like embedding of questions, or maybe as a teacher, you're like, I'm gonna create my lesson videos and I'm just gonna share the content, but later on I wanna embed it with, more of that ensuring that they're watching the video or watching the lesson. I'm going to embed questions. I'm going to embed a little bit more of those interactive pieces. EdPuzzle is a great tool for that, and it's free. So this is an EdPuzzle session, so I will get back to our regularly scheduled programming, but I think that that's a really powerful tool. All right. Next, I wanted to mention as a wrap up as the really teacher specific focused, and that this WSQ framework is really kind of a nice, it's kind of a nice foundational system for how you would approach using your screencasts and videos in instruction. So WSQ stands for Watch, Summarize, Question, and this is all from this Flipping with Courage blog, so that awesome resource, definitely recommend it. But the idea is students first watch your screencast or watch your recording, so they get the concepts, they get the basic ideas, right? And they can rewatch it however many times they need. Then they summarize it, right? They make sense of the concept. They do some sort of activity that you create to allow them to summarize and show that they have learned the concept, right? They're demonstrating mastery, they're doing practices. Then question. What questions could they ask that allow them to think deeper about the concept? So the reason I bring up WSQ is that this specific framework works really well when you're talking about instruction that is based on a recording, right? And I just want to mention this little resource. This is really slick, and it kind of digs into a little bit more of the watch, the summarize, and the question, right? So as you're developing your screencasts, think about the process in which you want students to watch the screencast, and not just the process, but also like what skills should they be developing? What do you want them to obtain out of that screencast, right? Kind of start with the end in mind. What should they be taking away? What do you want them to learn from that screencast? All right, getting back to overall screencasting for anyone in education, best practices. All right, so screencasting can maybe seem a little bit daunting for the first time, right? I think sometimes people are like, oh, I hate the sound of my own voice, or I don't want to show my face, or I don't know. If you're anything like me, I listen back to my recordings and I'm like, oh, is that really what I sound like? But it is what it is, and you just have to be okay with that. And you have to know that, especially when you are, like, this is a live screencast, right? So there's going to be times where I goof up and funny things happen, and that's great. But for example, like my Detective Tuesday screencasts, I try and record those so there's no mistakes or issues, right? So then I can make them nice and short. And that's what you'd probably do, like if you're creating a lesson or like a tutorial video for staff or directives to parents, that sort of thing. And so I'm going to show you some of the tools that allow you to kind of go back and like fix some of that, right? So, or edit essentially. And that's why I will show you Screencast-O-Matic. I think that one's the easiest to use. But some tips and tricks that I recommend. So listen to like all the background noise before you start presenting or start screencasting, right? I'm wearing a headset. I find that people could hear me a little bit better when I wear a headset. That's not to say that I couldn't just, you know, use my computer volume, but this kind of reduces any background noise, especially when, let's say, my lawn's getting mowed during it. Just kidding. So consider your audience. The length of screencast should be, I know everybody talks about that rule. I don't even know exactly what the rule is, but, you know, for this amount of time or for the age of the student, you should only be, you know, providing them with this amount of instruction. And that's true, right? You're not going to make a first grader watch a 45-minute lecture, but also should we be having our secondary kids do that either, or even our adult learners, right? The length of the screencast really should be minimally. Now, when we're doing like a webinar or like this, where we're doing an actual like professional development that's live, that's a little different. But if you're wanting to really summarize direct instruction without necessarily like audience participation, you really want to be aware of the length in which you're recording, right? You also want to consider the words that you use, depending upon the age. If you are doing a live session and it's more interactive, consider your wait time. I've mentioned this in previous series where sometimes when you're in a virtual setting, wait time can feel like forever, right? You ask a question and you're waiting for people to respond, or do you have any questions? And you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And in person, you're like, okay, it's kind of awkward, but I don't think I have any. But in virtual land, you have to wait for not only the wait time, but also allow people to like unmute themselves, right? So wait time is very important for any age of learners, especially in this virtual realm. Teach in small chunks and concepts, right? So break down whatever it is that you are teaching, for example, right? Maybe you have a unit and you have a variety of lessons within that unit, but within each lesson, maybe you have various different activities that build on each other. It doesn't all have to be one video or one recording or one screencast, right? You can break it up and you can have a 2-minute one here, a 30-second one here, a 5-minute one here. So consider that it doesn't have to be all in one take. Show your face to personalize the experience. That's why I try and do that at the beginning of these series, is to see you can put a face to the name and have that more human interaction. This is also very important, obviously, when you're interacting with kiddos. And then I like just reassuring people of the concept of we in this world are constantly inundated with flashy, cool, engaging visuals, right? On our phones, on our TVs, audio, video, all that stuff. So keep that in mind when you are screencasting. Now, obviously, sometimes there are just some dull topics that you've got to cover, right? But how can you make those topics maybe more engaging, having visuals, especially when you're trying to like teach a concept? Think about, how would I teach this in front of kids? Like if I were in my classroom and they were sitting at their tables or their desks, like what would I be doing anyway? So try and make that connection constantly, even though you're in virtual land. How would you make it engaging in virtual land? And then considering all modalities of learning, being sure that you are considering kids that might have you know, different needs. I feel like, actually this is funny because I have a lot of text on this page and I'm like, yeah, make sure your text is large and you have lots of images. So do better than this example. The idea is when you're doing a small chunk screencast of a lesson, or maybe guidance for parents coming back to school, or maybe it's a frequently asked tech question that you constantly get asked and you want to make it concise, make it clear, and not too wordy. All right. So that's all the sort of pedagogy and the conceptual ideas of, you know, what not to do or what to do for screencasting. Oh, also I have a little Allison's screencasting tips and tricks, so don't forget to check this out. But this is like a list that I created actually for our CCRESA staff before you make a recording. Just kind of go through this checklist, and just a reminder, like volume, microphone, headset, all that stuff. Some people find it helpful to like take notes, right? I know with my Tech Tip Tuesday videos, sometimes I'll just jot down, okay, make sure I cover these concepts. I've seen some people write actual like legitimate scripts of exactly what they're going to say, and that's cool, whatever you need, right? Just try not to sound robotic if you can, but and just like you would in a live lesson or live instruction, you want to make sure that you're clear what can students or adult learners expect. Have maybe like an objective list or agenda, a game plan, what you want people to take away, clickable resources. Try not to, I don't know, repeat yourself. Try to be concise, because I don't know, we've all watched videos where you're like, okay, I know there's this part that it's what I need, but I can't remember which minute it is, right? So think about the audience when you are creating your own screencasts. Don't be afraid to pause or take a breath. I need to remind myself of that one sometimes. But it's not a race, right? But you also don't want to sound like you're, moving through molasses. So, yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure everyone saw that reference. All right, so let's get to the comparisons. Tool comparisons. Okay, so there's many more out there, but I just wanted to showcase just a couple that might be worth your attention. So first and foremost, obviously you can record your Zoom and Meet sessions, right? So technically I'm recording this Zoom session. Technically I'm creating a screencast, right? I'm not going in and editing anything afterwards, because it's, more like a webinar style. But this is good for multiple presenters, right? Or if you have multiple attendees. Loom Chrome extension. Loom kind of seems to be getting some popularity lately. There's no time limit, and it has both an extension and a desktop app. So if you click on my links here, you can follow along. But the little Loom extension looks like this, and the actual, I like to call it like the brick and mortar, the desktop app, looks like this. And you actually install it, and it allows you to record your screen, and you can do a lot of different things with it. You can also, like, once you have your recording, you can upload it to YouTube. You can, as you see, drag and drop your applications into your folder. You can, and that's for downloading the app. But in general, here, let me show you like a screenshot of what this actually, here we go. I think they've got a screenshot here. That's a problem with showcasing screencasts when you can't really like screencast on top of a screencast. Anyway, here, I'll show you with the extension. Okay. I love how the extensions always make you sign your life away to everything. Oh my goodness, this got disabled. Anyway, I will come back to this one. This is apparently it's got disabled. Let's go back. Let's go to Screencastify, and then I'll jump back to the phone tablet recording. Sorry about that. So the Screencastify Chrome extension, this one I know I have working. It looks like this. You would just add it to your Chrome, right? And you would click the recorder. And you could do like one tab, you could do your whole desktop, just your video. You can embed the microphone, all that stuff. And you would start recording. Oh, okay, it's not letting me record because I'm in a screencast. So screencasting on top of screencasting. good to know you can't do that. But anyway, it allows you to literally record your screen, and it's really user friendly. And this one also has, oops. This one also has a desktop app. But the issue, or not issue, but just be aware that this one is a 5-minute limitation, right? So a lot of people like Screencastify and a lot of people like Loom. My issue with Screencastify is I typically need more than 5 minutes. And again, you can purchase fancy premium accounts for a lot of these things, but for what you use it for, make sure you are aware of the time limits and that some of these tools don't allow you to like go back and edit after it's been published, right? So know what you're getting into, or like test it out before you like go to, you know, record a lesson or recording anything live. And again, I just demonstrated that with my Loom Chrome extension not being enabled. But my point is, these all, like, there's not a silver bullet for any of these screencasting tools, because they all have, like, even my Screencast-O-Matic, which I love, the free version does have a 15-minute limit, right? So there's always going to be something unless you throw some money at it. So be aware of what you're looking at. Before I get to Screencast-O-Matic, I want to show you the phone tablet option. So like if you wanted to just record on your iPhone, for example, this is the directions and how you would do that, actually recording your screen. Now, would you necessarily do this process if you were really like recording an in-depth recording or a screencast of like, I don't know, like a webinar like this, or a lengthy lesson, or something that would need to look like really professional? I don't know, maybe. I think using your computer would probably be easier, but there's definitely going to be a time and a place in which, hey, this is going to be helpful. Maybe it's you want to demonstrate or record your screen because you've got a lot of kiddos that are going to be on smartphones, maybe not on computers, or you've got to demonstrate something that maybe they need an app version of something, and it's really hard to show that screen on an actual laptop. So maybe you are going to be recording on your phone for a reason, or your iPad or whatever. So those are those directions. And then let's jump into the actual my preferred tool. And I'll show you kind of my workflow. So Screencast-O-Matic, if you click on this link here, this is, they've actually recently updated given their like website a little facelift. It looked a little rough there for a while, but when you go to Screencast-O-Matic, again, you can start recording for free, and that gives you like your 15 minutes. You'll notice that if you use the free recording, there'll be like this little logo. Well, I can't remember what side. I think it'll be like right here on your, which is fine. It's just a little kind of stamp there. If you get a premium version, that will not be there, and it extends that 15-minute limit. So let me show you the plan options here. And it's a yearly thing, but you can see, you know, deluxe, premier, and this is obviously based on my own account, but you can go in and determine what might work best for you. What I would recommend is testing out the free version first to see if this is even what you want, and then go from there. What's nice is Screencast-O-Matic houses all of the videos you create in a nice pretty section here. Now, I typically, when I record, I've been uploading my videos. My default now has been uploading to YouTube, because that just seems to be a platform that reaches a greater audience, but you can also house them here. And so let me show you, I'm not going to actually record anything because I have a feeling it's not going to let me, but I'm going to click Launch My Recorder. And hopefully you can actually see this image. Somebody interrupt me if you can't actually see like the little recording thing or the red record button. But if you can see what I'm seeing, it's basically saying anything that happens in this frame will be recording, right? So in the background, like you'll notice in a lot of my screencasts, I personally like to use Google Slide decks, right? I like to have this, you know, in presentation mode and go through my slides this way. But if I'm going to go through like more of a demonstration, right? That's when I would go, you know, go to the different tabs and actually demo like what you would do, right? So I'm recording my screen and whatever happens on my screen you're seeing. So I can record with just my screen. I can record with just my webcam, or I can do both, right? My process is I typically just do the screen. If I'm doing a screencast with like Zoom or Meet, I usually show my face in the beginning and then take it off for privacy for everybody. You can see that I don't have a max because I have the premium. What I go through is I'll go and I'll click narration, and then it'll let me like test out my headset. So I'd say, yep, I want my headset. So I can go in, I can test my volume, making sure I'm not like yelling at people or I'm too quiet. I can test my computer audio as well if I didn't have a headset. So I can do all of these settings before I start recording, right? When I'm ready to start recording, and I'll just click it, and if you can't see it, you can't see it, but I click record, I'll say 3, 2, 1, and then it will start showing. And again, I can move to different tabs as needed, right? If let's say I really mess up and I say the wrong thing, I can pause it and I can go back and you know, start over. So that's why I recommend when you're doing screencasts that you, like especially if you're changing slides or you're changing the image, try not to like talk through it. What I mean by that, if I'm like, let's say I'm on this slide. It's not letting me. Here, I'll continue. So if I'm on this, oops, if I'm on this slide and I'm moving to my next slide and I'm like talking over it, and that's when I mess up. Sometimes it's nice to be like, okay, I'm done talking about screencasting tool comparisons. Moving on to my preferred tool. That way I can pause it and go back and find that little gap that I gave myself. It just gives it a little bit more room for error when you're editing, right? So I can pause, I can stop, I can go back. I can add some additional features, like if I wanted to get really creative, and there's other tools out there that like you can do, I don't know, like background music and like some really funny artsy creative effects and that sort of thing. I'm more of a like, let me give you my content and move on, but I think it's a nice touch when you can have that more professional look, or have the time to really spend on the aesthetics. I can obviously always trash it, and then when I'm done, click done, and it's saying, okay, what happens next? I can save and upload, which is my go-to. I can grab a quick share of the recording, or I can continue and edit. I think probably a burning question everyone has is like, okay, so once you have this video, what do you do? How do you get it to YouTube? So I'm going to jump to save and upload. And so it's going to say, all right, I'm getting this all set to go, and now you have your options. Do you want to save it just as a regular old video file? You're welcome to do that. You can still upload it to YouTube if you decide to do that first, right? You just have to import it. You can upload it to Screencast-O-Matic, which is what I did a long time ago before I started using YouTube exclusively. Or obviously you can say, let's upload it to YouTube. And so I guess I'll have to delete this later, this awesome video I just created, but we'll upload it to YouTube. And it's gonna take a minute. I can change my title, sample recording. And then I can say publish. And then this is the part that takes a little bit of time. It's basically working on uploading the video to YouTube. Once the video is fully published, you can go to YouTube. I'm going to say continue in background. This might take a second, so if it doesn't get fully loaded during this, that's okay. So I'm gonna go to my YouTube, and again, I can just go to my drive and go to YouTube this way, right? And everybody who has a Google account has a YouTube account. Okay. So I could click on my profile. And here I could go to, well, I could go to my channel. I'd likely want to go to YouTube Studio, but if you want to see what I have first in my channel, here is where I have all my videos, right? You can see that it hasn't been uploaded yet because it's taking forever, but that's okay. From there, I could click on my YouTube Studio. And this is where I could go to my videos and do additional edits. Or I could add closed captioning. I could, you know, change the visibility if I didn't want it to be public. So there's lots of different like settings and things that I can set up here. If I wanted to, back to my dashboard, if I wanted to upload, like let's say I had saved that video as a video file, just not in Screencast-O-Matic, but just as a video file, I would click upload videos, right? So any video file that you have, so any screencasting recording that you have that's in a video file format that you want in YouTube, that's where you go, upload your file. Then you select your file and it will bring it in. And then you can, you know, edit and add any additional features like, you know, accessibility and that sort of thing. So that's how my Screencast-O-Matic allows me to record my screen, but then that's how I get it to YouTube. And then within YouTube, I can, you know, go to a video, let's say like our last session. Oh, there's my awesome 32-second video. My sample recording. So here I could go to that video and I could you know, change all of the basics. I can edit it, I can change my settings, or I can actually like go to the video on YouTube. This is gonna be so bad. And yeah, so then I click share and I grab that link. And now I can take that link to that YouTube video that's from my Screencast-O-Matic recording screencast, and I can email it out. I could create a playlist, a YouTube playlist out of this. I could throw it with EdPuzzle that I referenced, right? I can put that into a Google Classroom question. I could put it into a form. I could post it right into my Google Classroom. So once you get that process, that you know, you choose your device or choose your method, your tool, right? What tool do you want to use? Once you use that and get it into whatever format, whether it's like an MP4 file or YouTube or Google Drive or whatever it is, that's where the magic happens, because then you can, all you do is you take that link and you put it wherever it is that you need, right? Okay, so that's Screencast-O-Matic, my preferred method, my preferred tool. So I'm going to jump to our chat and get going here.